If you're planning to move to Williamsburg, here are 5 negatives or drawbacks that I think you need to keep in mind if you plan to move here. Things to think through before you make that final decision. And we're starting right now. Hey, my name is Sam Santalone, and I'm a real estate agent in the Hampton Roads area that goes from Virginia Beach and goes through Williamsburg, and I do videos every week about living and moving to the area. So I've talked about Williamsburg a lot, about how much I love Williamsburg. A lot of positive things about Williamsburg that's very different than the rest of Hampton Roads. And I like that variety. I like the uniqueness of it. But what I've not talked about as much are the drawbacks. What are these things that I think you need to be ready for before you move? So number one is the lack of nightlife. And I've talked about this in my pros and cons video too, but knowing this and just having it sink in is very important because there is none after like 9 or 10 o'clock. I will tell you that maybe there are restaurants scattered across Williamsburg that are open on the weekends after 10, 11 o'clock. That's pretty much it. Most of coffee shops close at 3 or 6. A lot of them aren't open on specific days. There are a lot of breweries, and I love that. There are several that I like a lot. Billsburg's one, Aleworks is another one, but they often close, 9, 10 o'clock. There are a couple, again, that close at midnight, weekend nights. But again, other than that, there's not a whole lot. So what are your alternatives? You can go down to Newport News in Hampton. Also, not a lot's going on there either, especially Newport News. There's a little bit in Hampton, but still, the closest thing you have to real true nightlife past Newport News, like Christopher Newport University, that has the Ferguson Center for Performing Arts and Hampton Coliseum in Hampton. Beyond that, most of the like A-list, B-listers, concerts and performers that come to the area are going to be Norfolk and Virginia Beach, like Norfolk Scope, downtown Norfolk, a lot of stuff going on in downtown Norfolk, or Richmond, which is actually you're about equidistant from Richmond to Virginia Beach or Norfolk area. So you might as well go to either one of those. You're about 45 minutes away from Richmond. Other than that, you've got, community theaters, fine, but totally different vibe than having that nightlife element that, staying up until 10, 11, 12 o'clock, which if you're coming to Williamsburg, you might not be using that as your reason why anyway. So that's one big drawback. I think you really need to let that sink in before you come. Next is the Busch Gardens, Colonial Williamsburg, and just the tourism traffic in Williamsburg. Colonial Williamsburg, Busch Gardens, Water Country USA, historic Jamestown on the southwestern side of the area attracts millions of people in a given year. So especially in the summertime, between the end of school and the starting up of school the next year, you're going to have a ton of people in the area. The area is not very big, and so it's not designed for the huge influx of people that you might see, especially in the summertime. So if you are not ready for traffic on the interstates, Interstate 64, I'll show you on the map, actually. Let me show you on the map what I'm talking about. So Interstate 64 is the primary interstate that goes through all of Hampton Roads and goes up towards Richmond. Well, 64 is right next to, there's Busch Gardens right here, right? So as you come off of 64, the primary exits closest to Busch Gardens back up a lot, which also leads to backing up on 64, which also leads to backing up on Route 60, which is right next to Busch Gardens. And of course, the spillover from there. So it is a big traffic spot, especially in the summertime. I've dealt with that for years, especially going to Busch Gardens. Then Colonial Williamsburg as well. But then you also have the Colonial Williamsburg area, like where the Governor's Palace is, where all the historic little houses and shops are. Well, next to that's also William and Mary. So you've got a school next to the Colonial Williamsburg area. So during summertime, you've got people visiting for Colonial Williamsburg. During the start and the ends of school season, you've got more people coming in and out for William and Mary, people visiting and people coming to the school. So you're going to have a lot of people in a condensed area, especially as you get into the summertime again. So this is important to know if you don't like traffic. Some people come to Williamsburg because they don't want the traffic. They want to be in that more relaxed environment. Most of Williamsburg is. And this is not to say that the amount of traffic is so overwhelming all the time, but it's more than I think you might be expecting when you get into the area. Which leads me to number 3, which is, people don't talk about this very much, but there are some spots that have some rough cell phone signals. It can be patchy. Now, Williamsburg, again, as you get away from Colonial Williamsburg, so like the center of Williamsburg here, the further you go north, the further you go west, you'll find spots that can be patchy for cell phones. Especially if you mention Ford's Colony. Ford's Colony is I love Ford's Colony. The neighborhood is, I think, my favorite gated community in all of Williamsburg and really Hampton Roads. The problem with Ford's Colony is that it has some issues with cell phone signal. And so the further you get into nooks and crannies in different parts of Williamsburg, Ford's Colony being a great example, which is right here, the more you get away from the center of town, the more you might be dealing with this. So maybe if you're buying a house from out of state, this is something that I would definitely check on, see as much as you can. Either talk to neighbors, ask your real estate agent, hey, how much cell phone signal do you have? Depends on the carrier and all that stuff too. But my point here is you've got to remember that can factor in as you get further and further away from the center of Williamsburg. So that leads me to a topography element here, which is it is very hilly. Now, it's not like mountains. You're not going to be going into the Blue Ridge Mountains and you've got your ears popping every 5 seconds. It's not that extreme, but it's enough to where it's notable, especially in neighborhoods. So if you drive through Norfolk, if you drive through Newport News, even in most places, Hampton, it's flat. It's pretty much flat in most places. But if you get into parts of Williamsburg, James City County, North James City County, which is Williamsburg is in James City County, part of it is. And then you're going further north from there into neighborhoods like areas called like Toano, Lightfoot. As you go into this northern section especially, you're going to see that as you drive through neighborhoods, you'll be pleasantly or unpleasantly surprised at how many subtle hills and sometimes steep hills that you'll see in the neighborhoods. And it can also affect getting into your house, getting into your driveway. I've worked with clients that have very steep driveways going up or going down, and it's a real thing. Not being able to park in your driveway can be a factor, you know? And so some people that are used to this from different parts of the country, they're like, hey, Sam, this is nothing. Believe me, I get it, it's fine. But if you're from an area that does not have these hills or these steep declines and inclines for driveways, it can be surprising. Now, you also find that a lot of houses are built on hills or subtle hills, which can lead to basements. So most of Hampton Roads has very little or zero basements, partly because of the water table, partly because of when the houses were built. But Williamsburg, because you'll see a lot of houses built on steep declines or hills, you'll see houses that have basements built in. So you can have some additional square footage for your house beyond what you might have expected just in the traditional floor plan. So that can be a benefit if you want some extra space. You'll see that bonus space in basements in different parts of Williamsburg. So with all of these kind of rustic, kind of quiet elements, another thing I think you need to be aware of are the complexities or the nuances of the city or county public utilities. So namely, if you're in different parts of Williamsburg, James City County, North York County, which is Williamsburg encompasses both of those areas, depending on where you are, you might have to deal with different things. James City County specifically, they do not have their own trash pickup service. You have to hire that out yourself with different companies, for-profit companies in James City County. But the county does not provide this as a service. That's number one. Number two is you'll find that a lot of these spots, as you go further away from the center of town, have more well and septic systems, which, again, as you get further away from public utilities, that becomes more of a thing. But the next thing is what you might not have heard of before is called a grinder pump. If you've never heard of a grinder pump, it sounds weird, but it's a real thing. It's something to help a house that works in conjunction with city utilities, but your septic system might need a little extra push to get the sewage into the street. So you have public utilities access, but because of where your house is, either location from the road or maybe even a decline from the road to your house, again, because you've got those hills, that grinder pump helps to defy gravity and push the stuff into the street and into the city system. So the grinder pump, they're not super common, but you will find them sometimes, and the county can provide a maintenance agreement with you to maintain it for a certain amount of money, or you can do it yourself. Either way, but the idea is that you'll find some spots and some specific houses that need these grinder pumps that act in conjunction with the public sewage systems. So if you have any more questions about living in Williamsburg or the areas around, let me know. This is what I do. I love helping people relocate to the area. I have more videos here about living in Williamsburg, relocating here. You can also email me, call me, text me anytime, and I'll do whatever I can to help you relocate to Williamsburg and the surrounding areas. And I will see you on the next video.